Okay, so I realize that I haven't made a video in a long time, but due to all this hysteria and concern with the government shutdown, I felt like a video was needed. So first, I'd like to really discuss what happened to cause this government shutdown, and then I'd like to briefly touch on the tactic and whether this was a good one or not. So what really happened is that Republicans in the House didn't like the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. So what they thought that they would do is that they would pass a budget. A budget needs to be passed before October 1st because that's when the United States government fiscal year starts. October 1st and it runs until September 30th. So what they thought they would do is that they would pass a budget or a continuing resolution which funded every other government program except for Obamacare. So what happened is around I think it was September 25th they passed continuing resolution that funded every other program except for Obamacare. This went to the democratically controlled Senate, and obviously this was shot down. This was voted against, and it went back to the House. Um, After that, the House said, like, okay, they yielded a little bit, and they said, okay, all we want to do is we want to delay Obamacare for 1 year. So they passed a budget that did just that, delayed it for 1 year. That went to the Senate. The Senate said, no, we are not going to accept these conditions. We're going to vote no. So they voted no, and it went back to the House again. So finally, the House is like, okay, this is what we want to do. With Obamacare, President Barack Obama, the White House, the executive branch, whatever, they delayed certain parts of the law. The constitutionality of this is very questionable since all laws originate in Congress. President and the executive branch has no power to mess with the law, but they did anyway. They delayed the business mandate for they delayed the business mandate until 2015. So what the House did on their third continuing resolution is they said that, okay, we're going to delay the individual mandate, the part of the law that forces individuals to purchase into the healthcare exchanges, to coincide with the business mandate delay that force business to provide healthcare. So we're going to do that. And then they said we're also going to force or have federal employees and their staffers to purchase into the new healthcare exchanges in the Affordable Care Act. Now this was in the original law that all federal employees and staffers were going to have to go into the new healthcare exchanges provided by Obamacare, but then due to the Office of Personnel Management, they ruled that Congress was going to be exempt from this. Basically, they said it's good enough for the American people, but you don't have to participate in this. So Congress was able to maintain their subsidy of their health care, which was about 75%. So the American people were paying, still are, 75% of the congressmen's and their staffers' health care. So that's what happened. They passed that continuing resolution that reforced federal employees and their staffers to buy into the market, and it delayed the individual mandate for another year. This went to the Senate. The Senate said, no, we're not going to accept any budgets that have anything appropriations that do with Obamacare. They voted no, and 2 hours later, the government was shut down. So that's what happened. Whose fault is it? Is he said, she said, whatever. They don't really care whose fault it is. The government shut down, and that's it. But now we can look at the tactic that was used by Republicans and determine whether or not that was really the best tactic to choose. So now the Republicans are going to be known as the party that shut down the government. And the reason why this is very negative is because Obamacare was passed into law. It was deemed constitutional by the Supreme Court of the United States, and Obama ran on this law in 2008 and won re-election. So for all of a sudden, the Republicans in the House decided we don't want to fund this. It's kind of going to cast some negative light. Really, what I think would have been the best thing is take this to the debt ceiling debate, because that is really what is going to have some economic effects. If we cannot raise the debt ceiling, we will be pretty much cutting government spending by 40%, because for every dollar that the government spends, 40 cents of it is borrowed and 60 cents is actually raised through tax revenue. But I got this idea a little bit ago, and bear with me because it's not completely formulated. I'm just throwing it out there. But this government shutdown should really be seen as an opportunity. What happens in a government shutdown is all non-essential programs are shut down, either partially or completely shut down. Military, all these surveillance, all these other essential, military is pretty essential, that provides security. That's one of the fundamental jobs of government, provide security and protect liberty. But the government cuts all non-essential programs, and to that I have a question: is why is the government in the habit of keeping non-essential programs running? The government is supposed to be as limited as possible. As I said before, there are really two basic jobs of the government, and that's to provide security and protect liberty. So if there's non-essential programs to cut, those shouldn't have existed in the first place. So we have all these non-essential programs now open for business. We have all these workers who no longer have a place of employment due to this government shutdown, and we have billions and billions of dollars from investors who want to invest in the United States but are wary to. So we have a perfect setup. We have opportunity, all these programs, we have a workforce, and we have money, we have capital, and there's entrepreneurs in that. So I suggest we have the free market take over where the government has failed. We have the free market provide these programs, these non-essential programs, and we have them do it, because the free market does what government can never do. It advances, it prospers, and it learns. A free market, it has to, because the problem with government is that it's a monopoly on force. It can never learn because it never allows itself to fail. Free markets, on the other hand, businesses in the free market, they have to learn to be efficient and effective in the providing of services and goods to the people, because if they're not, there's going to be someone better out there with a better idea that's going to come in and do it for cheaper and more effective and more efficient. So I say we let the free market take over what the government has deemed non-essential programs. We have the free market take over those, and if we do that, there's going to be all this new investment, which is only going to increase economic growth, which is thus going to increase tax revenue. So what's going to happen is the government spending is going to cut because they're no longer wasting money on these non-essential programs, while at the same time their revenue is going to increase because all this economic growth of the free market taking over these non-essential programs, and thus we're not going to really need to raise our debt ceiling because we're going to have all these extra revenue, a decrease in spending, and it's just going to be great overall. And that comes to my last point, is the debt ceiling. Today, President Barack Obama had a speech saying that raising that debt ceiling is something that's routine, it's something that must be done. I just generally disagree with that statement, not alone for the hypocrisy of his statement, because in 2006 he said that raising the debt ceiling is a sign of leadership failure, and that he opposes raising the debt ceiling, but now he's saying that it's something that's routine and needs to be done. The argument that we need to borrow more money to pay back previously borrowed money is just highly illogical to me. He made the analogy of raising the debt ceiling as of a person having a mortgage and not paying on that mortgage. That was his analogy. I think a more accurate analogy would be a person having a mortgage and them not borrowing more money to pay for that mortgage, because what an average person does, what an American does, is they have a mortgage and they take from what they make, they take the revenue and they first pay towards that mortgage and all the other bills, and then they worry about what they can spend it on. They don't spend and then worry about whether they're going to default on their mortgage or not, because that's really what's going to happen. Obama was saying, if we don't raise this debt ceiling, we're going to default on our loans. No, if we don't raise this debt ceiling, we're going to cut government spending by 40%. We're going to use the other 60% that's raised by tax revenue, and we're going to first pay off all our bills, and then we're going to pay on the rest of the stuff. So that's something that we really need to think about. But in all, I say we have the free market take over where the government has failed. And that's something that history has shown to prove, that the free market is more efficient and more effective in providing to the American people than government can ever be. The government is there to provide security and protect liberty, and that's it. The free market can take care of all the rest.